Tom Cotton of the great state of Arkansas, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Intel Committee. Good morning, Senator Cotton. You have been working your rear end off. Where are you today?
Well, Hugh, yeah, I've been out on the trail eight states in the last 7 days. All of our critical Senate races from Montana to Nebraska to Texas, the Great Lakes states. We got a lot of enthusiastic voters out there, a lot of incredible energy. I feel pretty good about how we're going to do, not just in the Senate tonight, but also for President Trump as well.
I feel pretty good as well, but I'm not going to get over my skis. What I want to ask you first, Senator Cotton, because I've seen you a lot with Dave McCormick. He's, of course, West Point and Army. He's 82nd Airborne, you're 101st Airborne. I want to know, I think he's run a flawless campaign. I mean, maybe the equal of any Senate campaign I've ever seen. How did you feel about that particular campaign in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Dave has run a great campaign. I was with him and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, our friend, and Bill Hagerty in Reading yesterday with President Trump. You know, that's kind of the life of a Senate candidate in a swing state. We were supposed to be in one part of the state doing a rally for Dave, and then 3 days ago, President announced he'd be in Reading and Pittsburgh, so that's where everyone went instead. But it was a great setting. Dave did a great job on his closing message in Pennsylvania that Bob Casey has been a do-nothing senator, which is kind of charitable to him. He's actually been doing a lot, which is voting with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris 100% of the time. But you got to have a great candidate to win in a swing state like Pennsylvania, and Dave has been great. He's been super hardworking, as you would expect from an Army Ranger and paratrooper, and I'm very confident that Dave is going to win tonight, and he'll be a great U.S. Senator.
Now, Senator Cotton, I posted over at X. Next up, Senator Tom Cotton on national security, our military preparedness, and why we need former President Trump to be President-elect Trump again. Vote like your life. The lives of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines depend upon it, because it does. You have been very serious about this. I do not know our soldier's name who died as a result of the catastrophic decision to try and make a gesture about the pier in Gaza. He died yesterday. I don't have his name in front of me. But would you expand on this? Because it's a commander-in-chief election, in my view. There's such a difference between Trump and Harris on the most important job of the president, which is to be commander-in-chief of our military.
Yeah, Hugh. So, I mean, being a credible and strong commander-in-chief is a necessary threshold that any presidential candidate has to cross. Foreign policy is not the highest or the final thing that most Americans vote on, but if you're not serious commander-in-chief, especially in a growingly dangerous world, I think many Americans simply can't take you seriously as president. We know that Donald Trump was a strong commander-in-chief. For 4 years, we rebuilt our military, and we had no new wars starting anywhere. In fact, we ended wars, ISIS. But Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have just been a disaster. On their watch, our military has declined. We have a major war in Europe, major war in the Middle East, and now we have an American soldier who was deceased because he was working on a stupid political vanity project. This pier that they wanted to build to send aid to Gaza, which we certainly have no responsibility to do. We didn't send aid to Germany or Japan in World War II. And it was known that it wouldn't work in the waters of the Mediterranean. They did it to placate the anti-Semitic wing of the Democratic Party. It almost immediately started to fall apart. Soldiers were injured, and one of the soldiers who were injured over the summer just passed away of those wounds. That's add another American who's dead because of the incompetence of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We can't afford 4 years of Kamala Harris being our commander-in-chief.
I also fear, Senator, and I don't want to be alarmist, but that we'll turn her out. If Harris wins tonight, she'll be turned out in 4 years because she lacks the minimum qualifications to lead, and it will become painfully obvious, and she won't be able to avoid interviews. But the advantage that goes to the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping in that period of time would be extraordinarily difficult to catch up. Not impossible, very hard to catch up. You agree with my assessment?
I do. I mean, Kamala Harris is overmatched by events here. I mean, normally presidential candidates get to this point because they work through the 18-month slog of their own party. Donald Trump earned the nomination in 2016. Barack Obama, whatever you think of his politics, earned his nomination in 2008 against Hillary Clinton. Kamala Harris had this gifted to her. She can't even sit down with the women who run The View. How is she going to sit down with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and protect this country's interests?
Not possible. Now, I want to tell people about another late-breaking story. The big story is headlines this morning. Joe Rogan endorsed Donald Trump. Megyn Kelly endorsed Donald Trump, and I'm going to come to Peanut the squirrel with you in a moment. But this is a very serious story, and you're on Intel, but I know you haven't had a briefing on this, and you wouldn't tell us about it anyway. Ellis Items brought this to my attention this morning. Western security officials say they believe that 2 incendiary devices shipped via DHL were part of a covert Russian operation that ultimately aimed to start fires aboard cargo or passenger aircraft flying to the U.S. and Canada as Moscow steps up a sabotage campaign against Washington and its allies. The devices ignited at DHL logistics hubs in July, one in Leipzig, Germany, and another in Birmingham, England. I'm just astonished that no one is paying attention to what's going on in the world in this campaign, Senator. I know you tried, but it's not. People are worried about inflation. They're worried about the border, but we've got real national security problems.
Yeah, Hugh, that's right. As I said, for many Americans, being a credible commander-in-chief is a threshold question. If you can't get past that, they're not going to consider you on anything else. Those are the table stakes. It was certainly like that, if you recall, during the Cold War. After the disaster the Democratic parties inflicted on America in the Vietnam War, Republicans won every single election, save one after Watergate, for the next 6 elections. And they only went back to the White House in 1992 because our chief enemy, the Soviet Union, had disintegrated. The American people just stopped trusting Democrats with foreign policy and national security after Vietnam until the Soviet Union literally ceased to exist. Now, we had what some people call a holiday history in which foreign policy and national security receded, but I think most Americans realize that the world is very dangerous, growing more so every day, in part because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's incompetence, and that the commander-in-chief question really is the table stakes, that you've got to be a credible commander-in-chief to protect this country before voters start to entertain your views on things like how to control inflation, how to control our border, how to get the deficit under control, and things like that. And again, Kamala Harris is not a serious or credible commander-in-chief.
Now, Senator, I want to close by talking about a very silly thing, but not silly. I was furious on Friday, and I'm not talking about quitting the Post. I'm talking about the folks, 12 officials of the New York State government and county government went to the Longo home and seized Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon and euthanized them. 12 people with a search warrant from a government so bloated that they can't do anything about our borders, but they can send 12 people to kill a squirrel. And I think it sort of encapsulates my frustration with this massive, sprawling, ineffective, wasteful government. Did you expect that to be part of the closing news cycle?
No, Hugh, I can't say I did. I opened up social media on Saturday morning looking for some baseball news about qualifying offers to free agents and opt-ins and opt-outs on contracts, and I couldn't find anything because everything was about Peanut the squirrel. I was not aware of Peanut before this, but I do agree that it's a perfect symbol of an overreaching government that disrespects the rights of its citizens. I don't know all the circumstances in New York, but even if there was some technical violation of having a wild animal as a pet or something, don't you think Animal Services or whatever agency there is in New York could have given this guy a call, could have knocked on his door and said, we need to help you get right with the law so you can keep your pets? Is it really that hard to do? Or do you have to go in guns drawn over a squirrel? This kind of government overreach, the kind of demanding, bossy, obtrusive bureaucracy that the American people are sick of.
And this brings me to my final point with you, Senator. A president brings with him or her 3,000 to 5,000 appointees, and they appoint between 100 and 300 judges for lifetime tenure. The 3,000 that Kamala Harris would include would be whoever ordered Peanut. I mean, they're just waiting to move up from the New York State bureaucracy to the federal bureaucracy. Do you think a Republican Senate is going to be there if she's the president to check her and just say no, or affirm Donald Trump's choices early and get him going quickly?
Well, first off, Hugh, you're exactly right. It's not the kind of people that ordered the raid on Peanut. It's literally those people. That's an audition to come be an enforcer for Kamala Harris's EPA or her IRS, just like Lois Lerner was specifically chosen because the Obama administration knew that she would target conservatives. you're right about that. It's the actual people who ordered the raid on Peanut, as well as all those kinds of people. I'm confident the Republicans are going to win a Senate majority tonight. I think probably a healthy Senate majority, so we can confirm President Trump's cabinet selections promptly. I do not think Kamala Harris is going to win. If she did, though, I think it would be a very high bar for her to get any of these radical nominees through. But I'm confident that not only are we going to win healthy majority, but Donald Trump will be back to the White House.
Senator Cotton, always good to talk to you.